But let's move now to the final panel of this morning conference. This will be on the global legal battle for Palestine. And with international legal courts that are working to hold Israel accountable for its war crimes and ongoing genocides, this panel dives into the legal frameworks and strategies shaping the global response. Fermon from International Association of Democratic Lawyers, Karim Hassoun from the Hind Rajab Foundation, and Daan de Grefte from the European Legal and Support Center will discuss landmark cases, the role of offensive litigation, and how legal action is advancing justice for Palestinians across multiple jurisdictions. Mohamed Dawood from Justice 48 will be moderating. Please join me in a big round of applause for our last panelist. Thank you.
Hello. Are you guys tired? We'll try not to be too boring. My name is Mohamed Dawood, and I hope you guys all excuse me as I'm a little bit jet-lagged coming from Vancouver. And like Lama, I'm a morning person, but this is night for me, so stay tight. If anything is off, just ignore it. All right, so I'm happy to be here. I'm an engineer, filmmaker, and activist working in the intersection of liberation, law, and sustainable development for 2 decades now, I guess. I hope this doesn't reveal my age. But I'm not a lawyer, and I was a little intimidated to be sitting with lawyers today, so I bought a blazer, and then I realized it's too hot, so I left it aside. I'm really humbled to be with great experts in their fields here who will be talking with us today on a very important topic. But I just want to quickly set the stage on why we're doing this. Coming from grassroots experience, organizing in the streets, when the genocide was ramping up in 2023, I started having many questions, many legal questions in mind, and that I couldn't find answer for. And then I also noticed that we have an unprecedentedly complex global solidarity movement rising, and I was so inspired by all the complex systems that are created by this solidarity movement. And I started wondering why this is not feeding into the legal strategy and how we can harness this energy to feed it into the legal strategy. So this is where I started thinking about Justice 48 to be, the voice of grassroots in courts. So today I'm joined by Karim Hassoun, a 47-year-old father of 2, co-founder and operational director of the Hind Rajab Foundation, and also an independent elected councilman in the Belgian town of Wilbroek. I'm going to butcher any Dutch word here, so I hope you. Fermon, 66 years old, lawyer at the Bar of Brussels, specialized in international law and former Secretary General and current bureau member of the International Association of Democratic Lawyers. Daan de Grefte, I hope I didn't butcher it, but very close, I think. A senior legal advisor managing impact litigation work at ELSC, European Legal Support Center, focusing on strategic litigation and advocacy projects on corporate and state accountability. Thank you all for joining me today. So as you can see on the screen, our panel is trying to inspect a few aspects of the global fight for Palestine in those important moments in history. And I'm going to try to go from a micro perspective into more macro. So we're going to start talking about individual, corporate, and state strategies, and then go more into how we can harness the grassroots and influence into the legal systems. So I'm gonna start with Karim. I guess my question is more about what you guys, the amazing work Hind Rajab Foundation has done that influenced a lot to start, organizing. I guess the major question here is how can we mobilize around personal accountability? And your specific strategy in HRF focusing on rank and file, and why you focus more on national courts as opposed to international, and how this plays into the universal jurisdiction. So tell us more, if you can tell us more about these aspects, that would be great.
Thank you, Mohamed. First of all, thank you for having me on this panel, of course. Just one small correction. I am not a lawyer. I have my lawyer sitting here, but I am not a lawyer. I'm an economist, but anyway, it's not really relevant. So to answer your question, first of all, when we started on this accountability and justice endeavor, as opposed to the genocidal endeavor committed by the entity, myself, Diab, and several other activists, we already had like 30 years of activism behind our back, pro-Palestinian activism. And we were thinking of, when the genocide happened, what can we do? What is possible? What have we done already? What is being done right now? And what hasn't been done yet? So we were pondering these important questions. And when you look, we ended up at a certain moment on a strategy of offensive litigation, what we call offensive litigation. When you look at the broader pro-Palestinian movement, and when it comes to legal action, you mostly think of strategic litigation, which is going after the big players, states, corporations, companies who build military infrastructure or military equipment for the entity, supply chains and logistics, countries and areas that facilitate the transport of weapons or any materials that could aid and abet the genocidal endeavor. This is, of course, an important aspect of the struggle. And we also participate in it and we collaborate in it. To give a concrete example, we forced the European Investment Bank to acknowledge their $1 billion investment in the West Bank in occupied territories, for example, and to review its internal mechanisms and to admit to it. However, this is not enough. Just admitting that they committed errors and investing in illegal settlements is not enough. We are going further with this. We are also working, for example, on cases in Poland and Italy where we collaborate with other organizations to prosecute companies who build military equipment for the IDF. But we participate in that, so we think it is important, strategic litigation. But however, like you said in your introduction, it is not our core business. Our core business is the rank and file. So going after the foot soldier, to explain it in layman terms, the actual soldier that is committing the atrocities based on orders given by high-ranking officials and the politicians. Two reasons, I will name two important reasons why we focused on rank and file. First of all, I think everybody here remembers during the Syrian civil war and the creation of Daesh, ISIS, a lot of second, third generation Muslims from Europe and from other areas of the world traveled to Syria to participate in the civil war. Probably also committing atrocities and war crimes and crimes against humanity, obviously. And the reaction especially here in Europe and also here in Belgium. We are Belgium-based and we live in Belgium, so I will talk about the Belgian experience. The reaction there immediately from the state and from law enforcement and the judicial system was we need to identify these individuals, because these individuals were dual nationals. They were Belgian born and bred and grew up here, and all of a sudden they went off and participated in a war, in a civil war in Syria, and probably committed war crimes. So automatically the government, the judicial system, the law enforcement proactively started identifying and trying to understand who these people are, so whenever they come back, they could be brought in front of the judge and prosecuted and tried. When the genocide happened, we know that this is an international genocide. We know, which recently there was a publication where it was confirmed that at least 50,000 members of, reservists, IDF soldiers, mercenaries left from all over the world, also from Europe, from the United States, went to Israel, participated in the genocide in Gaza. Did anybody here in this room hear from a government that proactively started identifying these individuals, these dual nationals, when they are coming back to try to prosecute them? Did they, when the soldiers went to Syria, when the individuals went to Syria, no NGO had to be created, no citizen had to create an organization to try to identify them. When the genocide happened, we had to be created. We as citizens took it upon us, because the governments are complicit in this genocide by not having the courage of going after their own citizens who participated in this genocide in Palestine. So one of the main reasons that we targeted this rank and file and these individual soldiers is this one. A second reason, and this goes more into trying to understand the entity itself, Israel itself, as a colonial settler state, as a fascist state. I think nobody here denies it. I hope nobody here denies it. And a fascist state is constructed upon a military machine. Many analysts call Israel not a state with an army, but they call it an army with a state. So the whole society, the whole Israeli society is militarized. If you want to hit where it hurts when it comes to Israel, you touch its military. And we have delivered this proof by, in the keynote of Diab in the beginning of this morning, he mentioned that when we started filing denunciations. Actually, we would find something online, and we would download it, get the metadata, 1 or 2 A4 pages of describing the crime and what was happening, and sending it over. It was especially in Holland when we had Dutch Israeli citizens who had participated on a tour in Gaza, where we had proof that they were present, that they were boasting about it on social media. We sent it to the law enforcement agencies, the federal prosecutors in the Netherlands, and nothing happened with it. However, the reaction from the Israelis was relentless. We were immediately attacked as an organization, and we knew that we struck a nerve there. So this is where, the two main reasons why we knew that we were onto something, and we needed to do something. And if we needed to do something, it would not only be strategic litigation, but also hitting on these rank-and-file soldiers. Now, in practice, how do you go about realizing that? So, as first, it was, we might say that in the beginning it was quite amateuristic. We were denunciating them. Like, you see a crime, it's happening, you go to the police, you tell them like this crime happened, and they investigate. when we noticed that nothing was happening, nobody was investigating, nobody was interested in investigating, we decided that we had to create this machine, which is called the Hind Rajab Foundation. A machine that is taking it upon itself to become law enforcement, to not only identify, but also to map the complete genocidal machine, which is the IDF or the IOF. You can choose to name it the Israeli occupied forces. But to understand specifically how they are structured, how their command structure is, who is giving the orders, from brigades to platoons to the individual soldier, to understand the symbols of each and every individual brigade, and to go and by working, by understanding the structure of the IDF, by identifying how they work, by doing forensic, working also with other organizations on forensics, ballistics, finding ballistics experts, having legal and paralegal experts working, we managed to start creating files that were significant enough that could not be ignored anymore. That when you file a case in the Netherlands or in Belgium or in any jurisdiction, that they would see it and they cannot do nothing. And so in practice, and this brings me back to open source intelligence, because I wanted to refer also to one of the other speakers in one of the former panels who was mentioning the persecution or the banning or the shadow banning of pro-Palestinian activists on social media. The contrary was happening when it came to Israeli soldiers. For us, social media, Meta, is a gold mine. It was literally a gold mine in the sense that they were boasting about everything that they were doing, and they were not banned. They were not shadow banned. Their content was not removed from Meta. And this for us was interesting because we could use all of this data, because actually they were actually saying, like, we did this and we are doing it and we will continue to do this. So they are admitting to their crimes. So this social media, let us say, bias somehow worked in our advantage when it came to the Israeli genocidal endeavor. So I don't know how much time I still have, because I speak a lot.
Yeah, no, I think you covered the best part about individual accountability, and yes. I think it's a good wrap to what Diab discussed in the morning. Yes. But I think it's also good to move into a more strategic perspective and get some from yes. Daan about strategic litigation in terms of your experience with ELSC. Working long time for Palestine, serving Palestine in Europe. How do you see litigation advancing the divestment efforts or state sanctions between your work on corporate complicity cases like Booking.com? If you can give us more insights on that, and suing the government for the arms sales. Enlighten us with how did you see in action litigation advancing those agendas?
Thank you so much, Mohamed, for this invitation and for allowing me to speak here. It's really an honor to share the stage with such great experts like yourselves, and to share an event with so many other brilliant minds. I really feel still very young. I don't have as much experience doing this work as others in this room. So please accept my humility a little bit.
It's just being humble.
But it's actually an excellent question, and it really relates also to, I think, what Karim was saying. I think I will agree with everyone in this room that I love and greatly respect the work that Hind Rajab Foundation is doing, but of course it's an absolute shame that you have to exist. It's an absolute shame. Like, this is a task of the government, and the fact that you are existing and doing this really important work is a testament, I think, to the monumental failure of Western rule of law societies in enforcing the prohibition on genocide. So just starting off by saying that. The work that I am responsible for at the European Legal Support Center is, just by the way, a small part of what the organization does. We mainly work on defensive cases and monitoring instances of repression against Palestinian solidarity in Europe. But I do the strategic litigation side, impact litigation, offensive legal cases, basically. So your question about how litigation can drive divestment efforts, I think, is a really important one. I'd like to take the example of the criminal complaint that we filed against Booking.com in the Netherlands. As you hopefully by now all know, Booking.com is profiting from the war crimes that Israel is committing in Palestine by renting out settlement properties on their website. They are quite literally fulfilling at least the Dutch prohibition on money laundering, because if you make use of funds when you know that they come from a crime originally, you are guilty of the crime of money laundering. So in a very practical sense, it's been about 3 years ago now that we filed this criminal complaint. The company has not at all backed down. They have actually doubled down, I would say, on operating these listings. So it is quite clear that they are still profiting from those war crimes. However, it takes the prosecuting authorities apparently 3 years or more, I should say, to even come to us with an answer about whether or not they want to investigate this. This is not even a decision about whether or not Booking is guilty of anything. It is just about, do we want to invest resources into this case? So I think that should tell you a lot also about the red thread through this whole day. I think that is also shared by colleagues from HRF. So what it does do, though, is that it forced certain large asset managing companies and pension funds to divest from Booking Holdings, which is the parent company of Booking.com. What it also did is mobilize internal workers from Booking.com who have been very instrumental in getting this to the attention of the company leadership. There's a lot of grassroots activity around Booking.com as well, and you can really see that Booking feels the pressure. It's just we are just at this tipping point where we're waiting for a decision from the Dutch prosecutorial authorities, and we are trying to speed up that process by filing an Article 12 complaint, which is basically an appeal against a non-decision to prosecute, and also to put them on the spot and provide us with what they have actually done so far, because it seems like, it's very little. So that is one thing. Then secondly, you mentioned the case that we filed. It was a preliminary injunction, which basically means an emergency request to a civil judge in order to stop arms deliveries to Israel from the Netherlands, to stop the delivery of weaponized dogs, I would call them, so police dogs, military dogs, etc., which a majority of them are actually trained in the Netherlands. And then thirdly, we asked for an end to all trade with Israeli settlements, to the letter following what the ICJ said in its advisory opinion of 2024. Same thing there. Of course, the judges were very afraid to give us any of our demands, because they are afraid to violate the separation of powers, and they do not want to sit on the chair of the executive, as they say. However, what it did do is, I think now there are also other judgments that echo that statement, but it was at the time we managed to get the court to make the first ever national court determination that there was indeed a serious risk of genocide taking place in Gaza, and that had very far-reaching consequences for what the legal obligations of third states are in such a situation. So basically the judge said, while we cannot enforce any of this, it is pretty clear that the Dutch government is violating international law. So what we did with that is we then took that judgment, and we went to politicians and to the government, and we said, well, your excuse has always been that there is no legal determination that genocide is taking place or that there is even a risk of genocide taking place. Now we have your own national judge saying exactly that. What are you going to do? And this is all an effort to increase pressure on the Dutch government to end their complicity in the genocide in Gaza. That's still ongoing, by the way. Like, I don't. Everyone here, of course, knows this, but it's something that media tend to forget. So that's important. And I think to wrap up my point, I also want to keep it a bit brief so there's more room for follow-up questions later. But I think the most important message that I would like to convey here is that, of course, the law is not going to liberate Palestine. Far from it. Actually, the law is more a tool right now to colonize Palestine. But we can use it in combination with mainly social movement pressure and other types of pressures to change the narrative, first of all, to escalate the rhetoric around the genocide, and secondly, to put pressure on Israel and to isolate it financially, militarily, and politically. So that's our goal. Thank you.
Amazing. I want to piggyback on what you just mentioned around mobilizing inside Booking.com, because a lot of time the question is, how can legal strategy influence grassroots and vice versa? And I think this is a really important topic to discuss as we're exploring legal systems in the battle for liberation for Palestine, because your case on Booking.com influenced other cases in France and UK on Airbnb and other companies engaged in the same practice. And by the same token, you also influenced grassroots or people organizing, within those companies. So I would like to explore that more with Jan, since we know historically grassroots movements use courts not only as neutral arbiters, but as arenas for struggle, leveraging legal action to expose injustice, changing narratives, mobilizing communities. How can the broader Palestinian solidarity movement engage with the support, engage with and support the legal process?
Well, that's probably a 1 hour question to respond to that. I would like to go back to something what Karim said. He drew attention to the fact that when people from Europe, Belgians, French nationals, etc., went to Syria to participate in a genocidal enterprise, which, as far as I'm concerned, it was a genocidal enterprise towards the Yazidis and towards the Shia communities. Immediately, the whole machine started working. On the genocide in Palestine, it's extremely difficult. And I think actually that distinction or that difference says it all. The question of enforcement of international law and the question for accountability for international crimes is a political question. If the politics are right, if you are the bad guys, they will go after you. If you belong to the so-called democratic Western systems, the system won't move at all. And then everything in that case, for example, in the case of the criminal belligerent occupation in Palestine, the apartheid system in Palestine, and now also the genocide in Palestine, whether yes or no international law is enforced, whether yes or no the criminals are held accountable for what they are doing, depends entirely on the pressure that will come from the social movement. It depends entirely on the question of whether a social movement forces our systems, our judicial system, our political systems to act or not. The Hind Rajab Foundation does fantastic work. But it can only exist, I think, because there is this fantastic, large solidarity movement in all different aspects of life with the Palestinian fight. It's because there is 100,000 people in the streets in Brussels that it becomes possible to do what the Hind Rajab Foundation does so courageously. Because without that movement, an organization like the Hind Rajab Foundation would be condemned to fail. And so I think the most important thing we have to understand when we discuss the link between legal action and other types of solidarity action is that enforcement of international law and accountability for crimes committed by, I would say, our allies, is a matter of balance of power. It's a matter of the enforcement mechanism is people's struggle and the solidarity movement. And so we have to start from there. If the solidarity movement is strong, if the solidarity movement is everywhere in society, is in all areas of life, then a whole series of things in relation to legal action become possible. And legal action can then reinforce the solidarity movement, and the solidarity movement will reinforce the legal action. And I think that's what we are seeing now. I'm unfortunately old enough to have more than 2 decades of activity in the Palestinian solidarity movement. I think it's about 4 or 5 now, decades of participation. And I started actually in the solidarity movement in '82, when Israel invaded Lebanon and tried to destroy the Palestinian Liberation Organization in Beirut. At that time, there was a strong solidarity movement. We were 10,000 in the streets. And then for a very long period, actually, and a lot of things were possible. For a very long period, and personally, I think that is also related to developments in the Palestinian movement and to the attempts to that were undertaken with the Oslo agreements. For a very long time, we were not 10,000, but 10 in the street to support Palestine. Now, the demonstrations in Brussels, it's 100,000 people. And I think that is the basic condition to make legal action possible. If not, there's no legal action that will lead to any serious positive result if you're not backed by that solidarity movement. And I think tech, of course, in organizing and in stimulating that movement plays an essential role. But in the accountability process, I think it also plays another role to which Karim actually also referred. That is that the solidarity movement and the grassroots movement is also essential in collecting the evidence. There's no international police to collect evidence on crimes committed in Gaza. There is no international police force. The International Criminal Court relies entirely for the evidence on grassroots organizations that bring evidence. And the Belgian courts, in the cases I'm working on together with our friends from the Hind Rajab Foundation, the Belgian courts, there are 2 very nice police women. They are very active. They encourage us, but they have no way to investigate what is happening in Palestine. And so there also, I think, previously the role of collecting the evidence on the ground was played by essentially by the 3 major Palestinian human rights organizations: Palestinian Center for Human Rights, Al-Mizan, and Al-Haq. They documented the previous wars in Gaza minute by minute. One of the very first things the Israelis did when they started now this war and the genocidal enterprise now was attacking precisely those organizations. My friend Raji Surani, who is the director of Palestinian Center for Human Rights, who was essential in documenting the war crimes and crimes against humanity in previous wars in Gaza, minute by minute. One of the first things they did, the first days of the war, was bomb his house with a missile, trying to kill him and to disrupt his networks. And so I think there also it shows how important collecting concrete evidence on the war crimes is, because there's no accountability process without evidence. You can't go to court without evidence on the crimes. And so I think what is interesting is that I think the Hind Rajab Foundation, they're also opened the door by using new types of evidence collection. And I think, which I think are complementary with evidence collection on the ground. But there is so much data out there that can be used in an evidential process. And I think there is also pioneering work at that level that has been done by the Hind Rajab Foundation. But we have to reinforce that. I think the tech community has to help us to build easy tools to collect data, tools that can be used by anybody on the ground, so that it's not enough for the Israelis to try to kill Raji Sourani and the 70 people collecting evidence with him, but that anybody on the ground can collect evidence. And it's possible. Tools, there are some basic tools that exist, but we have to reinforce that. And I think there the tech community can play an essential role in helping the accountability process. We need mechanisms to process data on a massive scale, because all this data come in, but then you have to do something with it. You have to process it. And they're also, the Hind Rajab Foundation is doing fantastic work, but I think there is still fantastic progress that is possible. So the solidarity movement, and in this specific case, also the tech, those who are active in tech, have an essential role to play in the accountability process. Not only to put the political pressure that is necessary to make it happen, but also in providing the tools, in helping to develop the tools that are necessary to collect evidence and to bring that evidence to the courts. Because no court cases, no judicial process without evidence. And so that's what I want to contribute to this discussion.
Thank you so much. And I know we're over time, but this is an amazing segue to remind people here that we have a follow-up on this panel at 4 p.m. in an ideation workshop to explore how we can turn and convert all of these amazing ideas into action. And I really applaud Daan for mentioning a few tools in our disposal that we can start with our workshop. And I really look forward to seeing more people on this workshop. Finally, I'm gonna wrap it up with what Dan mentioned in the beginning. I'm really humbled and honored to be here with all of these great spirits and energies. And I just wanted to one quick highlight, very irrelevant to law, but on neurodivergence, since we mentioned it earlier. I also had the same observation as I was going through organizing, and that we have a lot of prevalence of neurodivergence within a movement, and I'm really inspired by Gabor Mate's quote in his book Scattered Minds. I really encourage everyone to read when he's exploring his own presenting his own experience with ADHD. And he said, as a father of young children, I found myself caring more about the outside injustices in the world than my own immediate household needs. And it really struck a nerve there, because I could tell there's some similarities with all of our experiences. And as much as we're trying to find the balance at home and outside, but also if those people who care about the world don't exist, we won't have these amazing conferences. We won't have a lot of amazing systems helping advance Palestinian justice. So I'm really honored to be here, and thank you all for listening to us. Free Palestine.